listening to Proof Text, a Glossa House podcast by Dr. T. Michael W. Halcomb, Dr. Frederick J. Long, Dr. Mario Melendez, Dr. Jennifer Noonan, and J. M. Smith. Welcome and enjoy.
Hello and welcome to Proof Text. I am Michael Halcomb, and in this episode, I'm offering a Greek Growcabulary lesson. So the idea with these Growcabulary lessons is just what it sounds like, to grow our vocabulary. And again, this one is for Greek vocabulary. We have the Hebrew Growcabulary counterparts, but this one is Greek Growcabulary. So what we do in these is we look at Greek roots. At least that's what we've been doing since the start. And today's Greek root is the Greek root kri, kaparoiota, kri. And this has to do essentially with making judgment calls or judging or judges, those sorts of things. So the kri, kaparoiota, makes its way into English in words like critical. Right? Where you're being critical of something, like you're making a judgment about it, critiquing, that sort of thing. So what we're going to do is I'm going to open up stepbible.org and we're going to look at the Greek New Testament and see where this Greek root appears and how many times it appears. So I got stepbible.org open. If you're watching, if you're just listening, that's fine too. I got my keyboard set to Greek and I'm going to type in kri. There we go. And you'll see, boom, a list comes up, and you can see that we have krima, a judgment, krino, to judge. It's about 112 times. Krisis, a judgment. You have kriterion, which is where we get our word criterion from. That's court or lawsuit. Krites, a judge, or kritikos, to be discerning, that is making a judgment, and so on and so forth. Let's look at the verb krino, and we'll find when we do that. Well, I thought we were going to do that. Let me try one more time. Kri, and we'll look at krino here, which appears more than 100 times in the Greek New Testament. Well, it is not working. So I don't know what's going on with that. Let me try one more. Oh, there we go. It finally kicked in. So our first occurrence is at Matthew 5:40. It says que to thelondisu kritene. So we have the infinitive form there, to judge, right? And to those wanting to judge you, right? And those wanting to take your cloak, permit them, and the garment. And then Matthew 7:1, do not judge, lest you yourselves be judged. Now this is in plural. He's speaking to a group. Y'all don't judge, but he's saying don't make final judgment calls. And there's a difference. I want to point this out here. There's a difference between making judgment calls about someone, some behavior, something as a Christian, and rendering final judgments on someone. Like if I say, oh, you're going to hell, you're going to be separated from God everlastingly, we know where you're going, right? Making a final judgment call, I don't have that ability or authority. And if I try to usurp that authority, I've overstepped my grounds, making a final a judgment call, krino. Rendering a final judgment. But if I make a judgment call about someone, something, some behavior, some activity, then I'm actually called to do that. And Paul talks about that in his letters, and it doesn't fly in the face of what Jesus is saying here at all, that we are supposed to, as believers, make judgment calls. And I would also say that as Paul trots out this sort of Christian ethic of making judgment calls, he's very specific too that Christians should make judgment calls, especially with regard to other believers, and that in some sense it's actually futile to attempt to make any sort of judgment calls on non-believers. Now we can again judge the actions, but making judgment calls on the person, That's a different thing. He says it's pretty much futile. But we are commanded to make judgment calls. That is something we are told to do, and we see this word kri, this root kri, popping up all over the place in the New Testament. Like I said, like we saw hundreds of times, right? And yeah, so I would encourage you to get a hold of this root. And if you want to see the passages in 1 Corinthians, especially chapters 4, 5, 6, 7, those are the most prominent ones where Paul lays out that judgment of, or that ethic of sort of judgment. So kri. And again, for your mnemonic device, remember that critical comes from this, critique comes from this, and so on and so forth. All right, I'm going to stop there, and I'll say, I hope that helps.
Interested in growing your ancient language skills but not sure where to start? Glosshouse can help. From illustrated readers and short stories to lexicons and grammars, Glosshouse offers a variety of resources for beginning, intermediate, and experienced ancient language learners. Head to glosshouse.com today. Glosshouse, language resources for the global community.